Hello friends of TV Agro, this is Carlos Sarmiento, Director of the Museum of Natural History of the National University of Colombia and Professor of the Institute of Natural Sciences of the same institution. Today we are going to talk about the new arthropods room. The Museum of Natural History of Colombia develops permanent activities to update its contents and renovation of rooms. For example, we have here the new room of arthropods. It was an activity that we advanced together with the Faculty of Arts and the Faculty of Sciences, of different departments, with a view to provide a room, which is consistent with the planetary diversity. Did you know, for example, what, if an extraterrestrial wanted to represent the diversity of this planet, it would not take a human being, it would not take mammals, nor a bird, what it would take would be an insect, because they are much richer and are in greater quantity than the vertebrates of the planet. In fact, they are the animals that influence in a more powerful way, in the dynamics of the ecosystems, and, as you very well know in TV Agro, they are very associated to the productive processes of the country.
Como decíamos hace un momento,
As we were saying a moment ago, the diversity of arthropods is marking a good part of the planet's wealth. For every kilo of vertebrate, there are 100 kilos of arthropods. 70% of the species on this planet are arthropods.
entonces,
So sometimes we have a very biased vision when we are told that we are talking about an insect, or we talk about insects and we think about the one that bites us, the one that eats the crop, the one that transmits the disease, the one that lives in the garbage, but in reality, we forget about many of the positive functions they provide. We then talked about the ecological functions that many of these species are providing and the ecosystem services that are functions that are directly positive for us. So in the room we began to talk about how insects are key in the formation of soils.
entonces en la sala empezamos a hablar de cómo los insectos son
How are they key in pollination? 70% of what we eat depends on pollination, and we talked about many species of bees, not only Apis mellifera,
por ejemplo en Colombia,
but for example in Colombia, more than 250 species of bees and beetles that are pollinators. We talked about their function, as seed dispersers, predation, they are good controllers of many herbivores, problems in crops, parasitoidism, which is also a way to control pests in crops, as food. It is worth remembering that people say, oops, I do not eat an arthropod, well, and then the ceviches, shrimps, lobsters, and all these delicacies that we eat, are arthropods. So that is what we talked about in the exhibition, the role as models in research, of this species of Drosophila melanogaster. We know more than of many living beings on the planet, arthropod animals, as supplies of many resources, the classic case of the moth that produces silk for us.
entonces la sala está montada.
So, the room is set up, with Colombian examples. What you are seeing here are Colombian fauna and flora, of the ecosystemic functions and ecosystemic services of the country's arthropods.
Es así como la exposición.
As well as the exposure we have shown many of the functions of the different groups.
Por ejemplo,
For example, in insects obviously we talk about pollination, the case of carpenter bees that are responsible for the pollination of the galupa, or predatory wasps.
normalmente cuando pensamos en los avispas,
Normally when we think of hornets' nests, one thinks that they are going to sting me, that they are an aggressive animal, that they are going to have a problem. We are going to have a health problem with them.
para citar un ejemplo,
To cite an example, in Brazil, it was recently identified that predatory wasps, wasps that form nests, are responsible for the control of more than 90% of the moth that is strongly attacking coffee crops.
entonces
So the room shows the functions of these animals, what positive roles they are having and how we could interact positively with them.
con ellos.
It is also worth showing that the room has elements of interactivity.
Entonces es posible
It is possible through these tools to know and access the organisms,
organismos
to know their different functions, their parts,
y poder ver cómo son en detalle
and to see how they are in detail through digital tools such as augmented reality or through QR codes with which the visitor can have a lot of information about them.
acerca de ellos. Cada una de las unidades que desarrollamos en la sala de artrópodos
Each of the units that we developed in the arthropod room was a joint effort between the team of former professors and students of the Faculty of Arts and the Faculty of Science. In all of them we were taking care of the level of detail about the structures, shapes, colors, so that there was a properly developed precision of each of the specimens.
ejemplares. Por ejemplo,
For example, here you see how we talk about the origins, the organization of the body,
cómo funcionan
how the parts they have work and the ecosystem services that arachnids present.
un grupo que
A group that we are always thinking about them around their history suddenly associated with a health aspect or a negative view of biodiversity,
visión negativa de la biodiversidad, pero
but all these animals
también son fundamentales
are also fundamental in the predation of herbivores and other organisms that can affect crops.
Hay bastantes estudios mostrando cómo
There are many studies showing how, if we manage the environments properly, spiders can be responsible for controlling more than 40% of the pests in the crop. As I was saying,
la sala tiene
the room has elements of interactivity through augmented reality. We can use the screens
poder ver
to see in detail the body parts of that little animal that is there in the space and learn some information about how its body parts work, how they are organized, what role they play.
qué papel desempeñan.
All visitors then have the opportunity to get to know these elements firsthand, in the new arthropods room.
Uno de los desafíos que
One of the challenges we had in the development of this room lies precisely in one of the most important features and perhaps responsible for the success of arthropods, and that miniaturization.
como mucho de la tecnología moderna,
As much of modern technology, they are also miniaturized, and that has allowed them to access many resources and many biological options. For example, in the brachiopods section, we talk about these little animals, and look at the scale.
este es 1 milímetro,
This is a millimeter. So the challenge to show them properly from the optical point of view was very big. We had to develop high-quality images,
para que el visitante
so that the visitor can know them in detail,
en unas herramientas interactivas,
in interactive tools where we can know aspects of,
por ejemplo, dónde viven, quiénes se
for example, where do they live,
colombianas que se están
who feeds on them.
en estas regiones, o casos, por ejemplo, como en México, donde
For example, in Mexico,
criados para suplir
these animals are being bred to supply the concentrates used to feed pets in several regions of Mexico,
una opción que en el país, en Colombia,
an option that we have also been developing in Colombia in several parts. Here at the National University of Colombia in Bogota, there are professors from the Faculty of Zootechnics dedicated to the study of arthropods as a source of food. With a high nutritional level for many groups, we also know something of the biology of these animals, as their life cycle.
entonces desarrollamos herramientas de transformación digital
Then we developed digital transformation tools, where you can see the cycle of these beings so tiny, 2 millimeters in size, how their body shape changes, how their biology changes throughout the different cycles, is an opportunity for our visitors to the new room of arthropods of the Museum of Natural History.
Estábamos hablando de comer artrópodos.
We were talking about eating arthropods, the concern that for many people it means that these words are mentioned, but, as we said at the beginning, a good lobster, a thermidor, a crab, a ceviche.
Nuestra exhibición
Our exhibition in the area of brachiopods talks a little about the characteristics of these groups as food sources for humans, sources that have been standardized for a very long time or that are potential new resources. Also functions of these animals as indicators of the quality of water bodies.
aquí en el Instituto de Ciencias Naturales.
Here at the Institute of Natural Sciences of the National University of Colombia, we have colleagues, Professor Marta Rocha for example, who has been researching freshwater crabs in Colombia for several years and has shown how these animals, according to their presence and abundance, can tell us how the bodies of water where they live are. If they are bodies of water that have been properly managed or suddenly we are having problems with the way these sites are being managed, so the exhibition allows us to show some of these little animals, And, again, to have an interactivity. If we want to see the shrimp in greater detail, we can enlarge it, know its parts, how these parts work, what role they are playing in the ecosystem.
La sala de artrópodos, como muchas de las salas del museo,
The arthropod room, like many of the museum's rooms, also seeks playfulness and interactivity as a way of learning, so for example, to address a permanent difficulty that visitors have and that we all have when it comes to understanding arthropods, and that is the number of parts they have. That complexity sometimes makes it difficult for us to accept or understand them. We developed this mechanical interactive where people can build their own arthropod, with each of the 6 groups we have. We
a modo de un animalario,
can eventually, as an animalarium,
fabricar un híbrido entre los
make a hybrid between the different groups. We had a trilobite head, trilobite body and abdometer. Now we have a trilobite head, with a thorax of a spider and with the name that this being could have.
podría tener. Entonces los visitantes pueden divertirse un rato.
Then visitors can have fun for a while, putting together a being, a chimera product of these mixtures. In the Museum of Natural History, we have developed a room with the purpose that people have a change in our imaginary of what arthropods mean, that beyond the cockroach mosquito or the garbage fly,
Una diversidad impresionante de seres
we have an impressive diversity of beings that provide many services to our ecosystems, our crops and our lives in general. We also know that many of them have functions in aesthetics.
comunidades y culturas
Many cultural communities refer to arthropods for features of their daily life.
de su vida diaria. Los invitamos entonces a que
We invite you to join us, to know the Arthropods Room of the Natural History Museum and have an interactive experience at all levels, from mechanical interactivity, as in this device, to augmented reality.
hasta realidad aumentada.